grown-up thing of all, and pretend she didn't want to see him again. Chapter 2. Northumberland. 6 years later. His face stared back at her, and just the sight of it was doing strange things to her heart, twisting it with a pain Emerald hadn't expected to feel. Not after 6 years, making her mind spin with unwanted images as the screen illuminated his autocratic features, golden olive skin, and hair as black as a raven's wing, eyes like splinters of blue glass, courtesy of the powerful Greeks who had invaded his country half a millennium ago, though his sensual lips owed more to the Italians, who had arrived a few decades later. Feeling as if she'd been punched in the solar plexus, she turned away from the computer as her sister came charging into the small kitchen of the house they shared.
"Have you seen the news?"
Ruby demanded. Emerald huffed out a sigh. A mug of cold tea stood in front of her, next to a slice of untouched toast, which should have been fairly explanatory, given how much she usually enjoyed her breakfast. She looked up to meet her twin's worried gaze. "Yes, of course I've seen the news," she answered quietly. "The internet is awash with it. I keep telling myself to turn it off, but somehow I can't seem to look away."
"No, I get that. The question is, what are you going to do?"
Emerald swallowed as she studied Konstandin's image for the 100th time and wondered if she would ever become immune to those arresting features.
"Emerald," said Ruby urgently, "did you hear me? I said, what are you going to do?"
Did she actually have to do anything? Emerald wondered. Couldn't she just bury her head in the sand and pretend none of it had ever happened? After all, when he'd said goodbye to her on that unseasonably frosty English morning, Konstandin had made it clear he had no intention of seeing her again. He hadn't been unkind, but he had certainly been very specific. "Don't waste a second of your time thinking about me, Emerald. I'm not in the market for a relationship. Understand?" Of course she had. He was a royal prince, and she a humble cloakroom attendant. It was hardly a match made in heaven. Their one-night stand was obviously intended to be just that, and she'd told herself she should be grateful for his honesty. But it seemed she had been naive. Because several days after their passionate liaison, his elder brother had been killed in a hunting accident, and Prince Konstandin had become King Konstandin of Sophnantis. That had been a lot to process, but what had happened next had provided the killer blow to her tentative plans. For with almost indecent haste, and despite having told her he never intended to marry anyone, her handsome royal lover had wed his dead brother's fiancée, and they were living happily ever after. Or so she and the rest of the world had thought, judging by the saccharine-tinted photos of the couple, which were periodically released by the palace, and which made Emerald flinch every time she saw them. But no, the latest news reports were stark. The King and Queen of Sophnantis had recently undergone a quiet and amicable divorce. Was there any such thing, she wondered? The couple had requested privacy, and there would be no further statement. Emerald might have been able to absorb this news in peace and think about whether it should be allowed to impact on her future, but Konstandin was on an official visit to London. He was tantalizingly close, not locked in his glittering palace far away. Wasn't fate offering her a golden opportunity to do what she had intended to do all those years ago? What her conscience was urging her to do, even though she was absolutely dreading it. Ruby's voice broke into her thoughts.
"If you want my advice, you'll give him a wide berth. He won't want to see you,"
her sister added, with hurtful candour. "No, I'm sure he won't, but that's irrelevant, surely. My feelings aren't really the issue here." Emerald licked her lips. "The point is that he has a son he doesn't even know about, and I think he has a right to know." "And what about your rights?" demanded Ruby. "Don't your needs count for anything? He's a king, for heaven's sake, and one of the most powerful men in the world. He's already shown how heartless he could be by acquiring a wife just weeks after sleeping with you. If you just pitch up there with his son and heir, isn't there a